The Assembly is now in session. Assemblymember Holden notices the absence of a quorum. The sergeants at arms will bring in the absent members and prepare the chamber. The clerk will call the roll.
Ashajian, Alejo, Allen, Baker, Bigelow, Bloom, Bonilla, Bonta, Bro, Brown, Burke, Calderon, Campos, Chang, Chow, Chavez, David Chu, Canson Chu, Cooley, Cooper, DeBobne, Daly, Daly, Dodd, Eggman, Frazier, Gaines, Gallagher, Cristina Garcia, Eduardo Garcia, Gatto, Gibson, Gomez, Gonzalez, Gordon, Gray, Grove, Hadley, Harper, Hernandez, Holden, Irwin, Jones, Jones Sawyer, Kim, Lackey, Levine, Linder, Lopez, Lowe, Mainshine, Mathis, Mays, McCarty, Medina, Melendez, Mullen, Nazarian, Obernolte, O'Donnell, Olson, Patterson, Perea, Quirk, Rendon, Ridley Thomas, Rodriguez, Salas, Santiago, Steinorth, Stone, Thurman, Ting, Wagner, Waldron, Weber, Wilk, Williams, Wood. Madam Speaker.
Colleagues, at this time, a quorum is present. We will defer the prayer and the pledge until later in the session. Reading of the previous day's journal.
The Assembly met at 7 a.m. Honorable Ed Chow, Assembly Member 49th District presiding. Chief Clerk E. Dotson Wilson at the desk. Reading Clerk Kathleen M. Lewis reading. The following were placed upon the
Mr. Holden moves and Ms. Waldron seconds that the reading of the previous day's journal be dispensed with. Colleagues, if we could please call the House to order. If you could please take your seats. Presentations of petitions, there are none. Introduction and reference of bills will be deferred. Reports of committees will be deemed read and amendments deemed adopted. Messages from the governor, there are none. Messages from the Senate, there are none. Moving to motions and resolutions. For absences, for personal business, Speaker Tony Atkins. Moving to procedural motions, Mr. Holden, you're recognized for your motions.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I request unanimous consent to suspend Assembly Rule 118 and allow Assembly members Cooper, Bloom, DeBobne, Gibson, O'Donnell, and Williams to have guests and photographers on the floor today.
Without objection, that request is granted.
And Mr. Williams' guests will be in the area of the members' desks and at the rostrum for the Assembly observance of the Asian and Pacific Islander American Heritage Month. Mr. Speaker, I request unanimous consent to suspend Assembly Rule 45.5 and allow Assembly Member McCarty to speak on an adjourned in memory today.
Without objection, the request is granted.
Pursuant to Assembly Rule 96, I request unanimous consent to withdraw Assembly Bill 1400, Santiago, from the Appropriations Committee and place on the second reading file. Recent amendments made the bill non-fiscal.
Without objection, such shall be the order.
Pursuant to Assembly Rule 97, I request unanimous consent to re-refer file item 29, AB 925 Low, to the Appropriations Committee.
Without objection, such shall be the order.
At the request of the author, please remove the following bills from consent: file item 120, AGR 9, Chang; file item 158, AB 1178, Ashajian.
The clerk will note.
At the request of the author, please remove the following bills to the inactive file: file item 57, HR 19, McCarty; File item 105, Assembly Bill 1123, Mays.
The clerk will note.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
At this time, we're going to move to guest introductions. We have a number of special guests with us today. I'd like to first recognize Mr. O'Donnell from his desk for his guest introduction. Mr. O'Donnell.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise to introduce Eric Hines. Eric is a teacher, the current vice president of the California Teachers Association, and the president-elect of the California Teachers Association. Eric is here today as part of the recognition of the 33rd Annual Day of the Teacher on Wednesday, May 13th. The Day of the Teacher encourages students, parents, and local communities to honor the contribution of California's teachers to their students and the state as a whole. Celebrations will be going on statewide in honor of the Day of the Teacher. Again, that's this Wednesday. Please join me in welcoming Eric to the California State Assembly.
I'd like to move to some additional guest introductions. Mr. Lowe, are you prepared for your guest introduction?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and members. I would like to welcome our wonderful delegation from the American Council of Young Political Leaders. If you're going to kindly stand up and stand up, and kindly join me in recognizing them here today.
Thank you, colleagues. At this time, we'll defer a number of our guest introductions to later on in our ceremony. We'd like to move to the API Heritage Month celebration in special honor of Asian and Pacific Islander American Heritage Month. I'd like to ask our guests and visitors in the rear of the chamber and in the gallery to please stand for the prayer. Without objection, today's prayer will be offered by our Assembly Chaplain, Father Constantine Papademos. Father Papademos.
Good afternoon. Let us pray. Lord, at first we might notice you by something we heard from somebody or by an external experience. But when we make a connection with you for ourselves, we bear witness within ourselves that we are standing in the truth. Help us to forget all the bad habits we have, to leave them behind, and instead embrace the truth and love, the kindness and compassion that are found in you. Renew the spirit of our minds to put on a new nature created in your likeness. Amen.
I'd like to ask our guests and visitors to please remain standing for our flag salute. Please join Assemblymember Phil Ting as he leads us in the pledge. Mr. Ting.
Members, I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
You may be seated. Without objection at this time, we're going to move to file item 117, ACR 61, for the purpose of third reading. Mr. Kansan-Chu, are you ready to proceed on this item? The clerk will read ACR 61.
Assembly Concurrent Resolution 61 by Assemblymember Kansan-Chu relative to Asian and Pacific Islander American Heritage Month.
Mr. Chu, you may open.
Thank you very much, Speaker. Speakers and members, I'm very proud to rise to present ACR 61 on behalf of the Asian Pacific Islander Legislative Caucus to recognize May 2015 as Asian and Pacific Islander American Heritage Month. APIA makes up 5.8 8 million of California's population, about 16% of the state population. This month, we celebrate the contribution of APIA to our nation and particularly to California. The APIA history in California and the United States dated back over 100 years ago when Chinese American laborers came to work the gold mine and built the Transcontinental Railroad. In the 1970s, the refugee resettlement program brought Southeastern Asians to California, adding another layer to our rich culture. While the APIA community includes many different communities, all of their stories are tied together by challenges they face in the United States. However, in spite of those struggles, APIA community have dedicated their lives to their family, our state, and our nation. They organize like the Filipino-American farm workers who fought for workers' rights as part of the United Farm Workers movement in the 1960s. The Japanese Americans fought bravely for our country during World War II, while their families were in the internment camp back home. Additionally, Indian and Chinese immigrants have played a huge part in the success of high-tech industry in the United States, especially in the Silicon Valley where I represent. APIA Heritage Month serves as a time to honor this history and to acknowledge how APIA continue to contribute to all segments of our society. As the many diverse Asian and Pacific Islander Americans communities throughout the states celebrate the APIA Heritage Month this May, I hope you will join the APIA community in your district to celebrate our proud history and heritage. Please join me in commemorating Asian and Pacific Islander Americans Heritage Month by supporting ACR 61. Thank you.
Are there any other members who would like to speak on this item? Mr. Alejo.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, members. On behalf of all my colleagues in the Latino caucus, we rise also with our brothers and sisters in the API caucus in supporting ACR 61, recognizing the Asian and Pacific Islander American Heritage Month. Latinos have a long history of community and coalition building with Asian and Pacific Islander Americans. In the early 1900s, immigration restrictions and xenophobic land ownership laws brought Punjabi and Mexican American community members together to form interracial families and farming communities in the Central Valley and Imperial Valleys. And as we celebrated during Cesar Chavez Month, we were proud to also recognize the deep bond forged between Filipino and Mexican workers and great leaders like Cesar Chavez with Lariat Leong, who will be recognized later today. But we also remember that in earlier periods, in 1946, during the landmark California case, Mendez versus Westminster, it was the Japanese American Citizens League who filed an amicus brief, a friend of the court brief, with the court in support of ending segregation in California, and that was 8 years before Brown versus Board of Education. These are all just examples out of many throughout history where our communities have come together to strengthen our state and strengthen our nation. The API community has a long history of fighting for social justice in California and throughout our country. During this month of API Heritage Month, it is time for us to reflect on the significant contributions of our brothers and sisters in the API community, and we ask that we come out in support of this important resolution on behalf of all working Californians.
Thank you, Mr. Alejo. Ms. Kim.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and colleagues. I'm pleased to stand and celebrate the Asian and Pacific Islander Heritage Month and recognize the vibrant history of Asian culture and the achievements of our diverse community. Not only am I honored to stand with many of our honorees today, but I'm proud to be one of the growing large API caucus, and there are 12 of us now. So I want to thank my colleague from San Francisco area for San Jose for bringing this bill forward. And continuing the national tradition of showing some of the indelible contributions Asians have made to our country and to our state. Across the state, I'm sure you have already begun noticing the celebrations, fairs, festivals, and community events celebrating California's rich diversity. And I'm proud to host one of those events later this month in my own district. So, members, I respectfully ask for your aye vote.
Thank you, Mr. Levine.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and members. I rise on behalf of the Jewish Caucus in support of ACR 37 and thank the author for bringing this measure forward. This resolution provides Californians with an opportunity to recognize the achievements, contributions, and history of Asian and Pacific Islander Americans. One such hero is Dr. Feng Shan Ho. Dr. Ho was a Chinese diplomat in Austria beginning in 1937. He was one of the first diplomats to save Jews by issuing them visas, thereby allowing them to escape the Holocaust. Dr. Ho did this in defiance of orders and was responsible for saving thousands of Jews in Nazi-occupied Austria in 1938 and 1939. Yet he was completely unknown, even by the people he saved. After 40 years of diplomatic service, Dr. Ho moved to San Francisco and retired. Dr. Ho died in 1997, an unknown hero of World War II. In the spirit of this resolution and of recognizing heroes like Dr. Feng Shan Ho, I ask for your aye vote on this resolution.
Mr. Lowe.
Mr. Speaker and members, thank you very much. I rise on behalf of the LGBT Legislative Caucus and want to mention the importance of the strength of the diversity within the Asian Pacific Islander community and the LGBT community. Asian Pacific Islanders face discrimination here in California with the California Alien Land Law, which prohibited Asian Pacific Islanders from owning property. Similarly, the Chinese Exclusion Act, which prohibited Chinese Americans from being Americans here in California, and particularly as it relates to the LGBT community, understanding the struggles and the challenges of not being able to donate blood, not being able to be part of the Boy Scouts, not being able to get married. These struggles are real. And on behalf of the LGBT caucus, we stand united with Asian Pacific Islander communities, demonstrating the strength of our diversity. Thank you very much.
Mr. Jones-Sawyer, you're recognized.
I rise in support of ACR 61, recognizing May as Asian and Pacific Islander American Heritage Month on behalf of the California Legislative Black Caucus. During the Civil Rights Movement of the 1960s, a coalition of blacks, Latinos, Native Americans, APIs, and Caucasians fought vigorously for a relevant education, an education that includes the voice and history of people of color. This struggle continued into the early 1970s, leading to the creation of ethnic studies in our universities. These students knew that we cannot progress until we learn from the important lessons of our past. API Heritage Month is an opportunity to highlight inspiring stories of Asian American leaders like Fred Korematsu, who took his internment from World War II to the Supreme Court, and Professor Ronald Takaki, who pioneered ethnic studies across the nation and reflect on the struggles and accomplishments of Asian Americans. It is with this shared call of unity, I call for your aye vote on ACR 61.
Ms. Cristina Garcia, you're recognized.
Mr. Speaker, members, I rise today as the Vice Chair of the Legislative Women's Caucus to support ACR 61. I stand proudly before you representing the 58th District, which is home to a number of Asian Pacific Islanders that contribute not just to my district, but strengthen California's entire heritage. California's history is steeped in API presence, and like any phoenix rising from the ashes, the API community continues to strengthen its place in the table in many ways. Whether you're inspired by Cheryl Wu Dunn building microenterprise, or laughing with Margaret Cho or Mindy Kaling, or lucky enough to wear Vera Wang or Vienne Tam, you are influenced by API women. The writings of Jhumpa Lahiri, Lisa C., and Amy Tam help us all see their culture in beautiful ways. News of the world comes to us by Connie Chong, Ann Curry, and Lisa Ling. And to my new colleagues here in the legislature, it is inspiring to see the volume of API women coming into our elected offices. I encourage all of you to vote aye on ACR 61 to celebrate the contributions of all Asian Pacific Islanders have made to our combined California history. Thank you.
Mr. Cooley, you're recognized.
Colleagues, I simply want to rise in support of this, both in honor of its outstanding statewide merit and the addition of Benjamin Fong Cooley. As a grandchild 3 weeks ago, Benjamin has a Hmong heritage, and we finalized the adoption into the Cooley home just recently. Thank you very much.
Seeing and hearing no further debate, Mr. Kansan-Chu, you may close.
Thank you, speakers, and I'll also thank the members for your supporting comment. This time I will ask for open the first row for co-authoring.
The first roll call will be for co-authors on ACR 61. The clerk will open the roll. All members vote who wish to vote. All members vote who wish to vote for co-authors. Clerk will close the roll. There are 69 co-authors added. Members, if we can take a voice vote on this item, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed, please say nay. The ayes have it. The resolution is adopted. For this 11th Assembly observation of Asian and Pacific Islander American Heritage Month, we will recognize a number of distinguished honorees. I'm going to appoint at this time an escort committee to bring our special guests onto the floor for a special presentation. Colleagues, if you could please retire to the rear of the chamber as I call your name. Assembly members Alejo, Bonta, Chang, Chow, Christina Garcia, Joan Sawyer, Kim, Lowe, Medina, and I also like to recognize a special guest, Senator Richard Pan, if you could also join the escort committee. And to receive our honorees, I'd like to ask the four following individuals, if you could please move to the center aisle. Our Assistant Democratic Leader, Nora Campos, Republican Leader Olson, Assemblymember Williams, who's the chair of the API caucus, and special guest Senator Janet Nguyen, who is a co-chair of the Joint API Legislative Caucus. If you could please move to the center aisle. And at this time, we will now move to the introductions of the Asian and Pacific Islander American Heritage Month honorees for 2015. Our clerk will read.
The honoree for excellence in civil rights is the late Larry Itliong. He's represented by his son, Mr. Johnny Itliong. He's escorted by Assembly members Bonta and Alejo. In 1929, 15-year-old Larry Itliong immigrated to the United States. He arrived during the Great Depression and worked on the railroads as a migrant farm worker in Montana, South Dakota, Washington State, and finally California. Along the way, he learned of the plight suffered by Filipinos and other immigrants working as farm laborers. He organized a group of 1,500 Filipinos to strike against the grape growers of Delano, California, which lasted 8 days. Mr. Itliong reached out to Cesar Chavez to form a coalition that would evolve into the United Farm Workers of America. The unification of farm labor workers of different ethnicities was unprecedented at the time, setting an example for future generations of workers and organizers and proving to be one of the reasons for the success of the movement. Mr. Itliong became a prominent leader in one of the greatest social justice movements in the United States, the American Farm Labor Movement. Welcome Mr. Johnny Itliong, who's representing the Itliong family. Our honoree for excellence in education is Henry T. Yang. He's escorted by Assembly members Chow and Medina. Dr. Henry T. Yang was named UC Santa Barbara's 5th chancellor in 1994. At Purdue University, he was the Neil A. Armstrong Distinguished Professor of Aeronautics and Astronautics and the Dean of Engineering for 10 years. Dr. Yang specializes in aerospace structures, structural dynamics, composite materials, finite elements, transonic aeroelasticity, wind and earthquake structural engineering, and intelligent manufacturing systems. He has authored and co-authored more than 170 articles for scientific journals, as well as widely used textbook on finite element structural analysis. He has guided 54 PhD and 20 MS recipients. He continues to teach an undergraduate course every year and is currently guiding 3 PhD students with support from National Science Foundation grants. Dr. Yang is a member of many prestigious organizations, like the National Academy of Engineering, and he has received numerous recognitions for his research, teaching, and public service, including 7 honorary doctorates and the Benjamin Garver Law Medal from the American Society of Engineering and Education. Please welcome Dr. Henry Yang. The honoree for excellence in law is Erica Yu. She's escorted by Assembly Members Lowe and Christina Garcia. The Honorable Erica Yu was appointed to the Santa Clara County Superior Court in October 2001. Judge Yu is the first Asian American female to serve on this bench, and she currently serves in the Civil Division of the court. At the Juvenile Dependency Division of the court, she helped found the Family Wellness Court, which serves children under 3 whose families are struggling with addiction, homelessness, poverty, and violence. Prior assignments include service in the civil and criminal divisions of the court and as a supervisor of the Criminal Domestic Violence Division. Judge Yu is in her second term as chair of the Commission on Judicial Performance and as a member of the Commission on Access to Justice. She established Santa Clara County's first countywide collaborative workshop program known as Domestic Violence Information and Resources, which has provided education for victims, perpetrators, and their children throughout the country in multiple languages and multiple locations, including homeless shelters, jails, schools, and community centers. Welcome, Judge Erica Yu. The honoree for excellence in journalism is K.W. Lee. He is escorted by Assembly Members Kim and Joan Sawyer. Mr. Lee is known as the Dean of Asian American Journalism for his pioneering accomplishments, significant contributions, and mentoring. Mr. Lee was the first Asian immigrant hired by a mainstream daily newspaper. He worked at the Tennessee Kingsport Times and News and the Charleston Gazette in West Virginia. As an investigative reporter, Mr. Lee covered a variety of human interest stories that focused on social justice, such as black lung disease among coal miners, and the civil rights movement in Jim Crow South. During the 1970s, Mr. Lee initiated a series of investigatory pieces that ran in the Sacramento Union about Chol Soo Lee, a Korean immigrant who was racially profiled and wrongfully convicted in 1973 for a murder involving Chinese gangs in San Francisco's Chinatown. Over the course of Chol Soo Lee's retrial, Mr. Lee produced over 100 articles shedding light on his plight and the inconsistencies surrounding his first trial. Mr. Chol Soo Lee was acquitted, and these important papers are now archived at UC Davis. Welcome, Mr. K.W. Lee. The honoree for excellence in culinary arts is Charles Fan. He's escorted by Senator Pan and Assembly Member Chang. Mr. Charles Fan is the award-winning executive chef and owner of San Francisco's nationally acclaimed restaurant, The Slanted Door, and 6 other restaurants. He is considered to be the inventor of modern Vietnamese cuisine in the United States. The immediate popularity of The Slanted Door played a significant role in the revitalization of the Mission District and contributed to the redevelopment of the Ferry Building as one of the country's premier food destinations. Chef Fan was named the best chef in California in 2011 by the James Beard Foundation, is listed in Who's Who in Food and Beverage in America, and is the recipient of the James Beard Outstanding Restaurant Award for 2014. Mr. Fan authored 2 award-winning books, Vietnamese Home Cooking, to inspire readers to make interesting, fast, flavorful, and healthy Vietnamese dishes in their home kitchens, and The Slanted Door, which offers 100 recipes of modern Vietnamese food, cocktail, and dessert. Welcome, Charles Fan.
Thank you, colleagues. I want to recognize some members for introductions of API guests at their desks. Mr. Cooper, you're recognized at your desk for purpose of introduction.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise to acknowledge Dr. Randy Kachioka, API community leader from my district. Dr. Kachioka is president of the Asian Peace Officers Association and works collaboratively with all law enforcement organizations and various community groups for the promotion and advancement of Asian Pacific Islanders within the law enforcement community. Dr. Kachioka is also president of the Asian Pacific State Employees Association Foundation and is involved with various API cultural activities. He is making significant contributions to our community. I'm pleased to have my good friend, Dr. Randy Kachioka, joining us today.
At this time, I want to welcome all of our special guests in the rear of the chamber and in the gallery who have joined us for today's ceremony. I'd like to also ask our honorees to please gather in the front for a group photo and encourage all of our visitors, guests, and members to view a special exhibit on the second floor rotunda of the Capitol in honor of Asian Pacific Islander Heritage Month. If I could ask our guests if you want to please join for one last photo. Thank you. This concludes our ceremony. We're going to give our guests a brief moment to depart from the chamber, but members, if you could please not leave the chamber. We do have other business on file. We'll start in about 1 minute. Colleagues, at this time we will go back to our normal business. I'd like to recognize Mr. Bloom for his guest introduction.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and members. It's a great honor for me to introduce representatives of the Los Angeles Trial Lawyers Charities, Amy Kirby, Min Nguyen, Dana Weiss, Robert Simon, Stuart Zanville, Alyssa Shablasky, and Belinda Team. LATLC was founded in 2006 by 7 lawyers, but since has grown to over 1,000 attorneys, donors, sponsors, and volunteers who have partnered with more than 30 charities. Of particular note is the work they've done in supporting and raising awareness for the Rape Foundation, the LA Mission, the Blind Children's Center, U.S. Vets, Vista Del Mar, and the March of Dimes. Earlier this month, LATLC also raised $200,000 for college scholarships for 16 high school seniors during one of their annual charity events, and I'd like to ask you to join me in welcoming these representatives to the assembly floor and congratulating them for the great work that they are doing.